Okay, we're back, continuing with the Freddie Hubbard classics, if you want to call it that. The records that I think are the heart of the Freddie Hubbard sound. So all these previous records, these three that we talked about in the previous video, are 1960 recordings. And so now we're jumping ahead to 1962 with one of my favorite albums of all time, Herbie Hancock's Takin' Off, with Freddie on trumpet, Dexter Gordon on tenor sax, Butch Warren on bass, and Billy Higgins on drums. This has 3 tunes on each side. They're all original compositions, and so it really lets Herbie Hancock show his vision for the music. It's a real great mix of fun, upbeat, and accessible tunes, with some that are a bit more complex, some a bit more introspective, and starting to edge out a little bit from these standard sort of hard bop harmonies that you get. This is pushing things a little bit more. Things are getting a little bit more abstract and challenging themselves and challenging the listeners. So it's a great mix of tunes on this record. Freddie sounds great. I would say he's not at his most explosive. You're not going to get the fastest, most intense flurry of notes on this record, but his lines are very well thought out. And on the last track, he just has this amazing airy sound that to me seems like a new trumpet sound that did not exist before they recorded that track. Just a really calm, majestic sound he's getting out of his trumpet, with beautiful arcs to the lines. Okay, so that's Takin' Off, 1962. Now, this is a quintet record, and all these other ones were also quintet records. That's not necessarily done on purpose here. They just happen to be, and I think that they have a spare enough sound where you really get a lot of Freddie. You get a feel for his soloing more so than ensemble playing. And part of the reason why I wanted to record this video was I had started to look for quartet recordings by Freddie or other hard bop trumpeters, and really wasn't coming across too many. I know there are a handful, and some very good ones, but during this period, to my knowledge, Freddie never really recorded in a quartet on these 60s Blue Notes. But the exception is Empyrean Isles, which is Herbie Hancock's record, where Freddie is the only horn player. And so this is 1964, 1965. Can't remember exactly. It's a very well-known record. It's more avant-garde. It's really pushing things. It's 3 years later than Takin' Off. And while Takin' Off I thought was a step out from the meat and potatoes hard bop, Empyrean Isles takes it even further. And it seems more experimental too. There's a lot of space in places. The harmonies are more advanced. There's more free style playing. But there's also some super catchy tunes on it. The first tune, I forget the title, I have to look it up. The first track on side 1, no, I'm sorry, the first track on side 2, that's the famous sample. So it's got a great groove to it. It's funky. It's just a really enjoyable, accessible track. But with the great playing of Freddie Hubbard, the sophisticated comping of Herbie Hancock. So it's sophisticated jazz, but it's just a really great groove. So let's see what else. So this is, this is a quartet record, and doesn't have the sort of matching horn lines that you might have in some of these other quintet recordings, all these other quintet recordings. Those are all great pairings of trumpet with tenor sax. And whereas these all have sort of written tunes that have clear melodies, I would say that when you get to Empyrean Isles, it's a little bit more spotty and, maybe more improvised at the heads of things and more angular. Yeah, this has got more angular tunes and lines to it. So I could have picked more Freddie Hubbard records. Instead of Empyrean Isles, I could have picked Maiden Voyage. That's a great record. I wanted something different from I wanted a non-quintet. Other great Freddie albums, I could have picked out Ready for Freddie. I think Open Sesame is highly regarded. I tend to not listen to that one as much. Here to Stay is a great album and kind of pushing the envelope a little bit. Those are all from the early to mid 60s. So to wrap this up, I just feel like Freddie Hubbard is a really, he's just a fantastic player. He's interesting to me because he has so much capability. I would say more capability than the vast majority of trumpeters. And so it's interesting to see what has he done with that. And he came out of a purely bop tradition, a hard bop tradition. But he's a power player. He's almost Coltrane-like in the power of his lines and his playing. He's not really sort of the modal player of Coltrane. He didn't have the same band as Coltrane, but he's so muscular in his trumpet playing, and he has so many great ideas. He's someone you need to listen to. I guess that's what I'm trying to say with these videos. And so if you're going to single out one horn player to associate with what I'll call mature hard bop, hard bop that's not just, from the original 50s with Mobley and Blakey and those guys, but someone who really takes it to the next step, but has that amazing facility and incredible musicianship. I would argue that Freddie Hubbard fits that bill. He has great versatility. He can play, super intense. He has amazing sensitivity in ballads and can play in a beautiful soft tone. So you need to check him out if you don't know him that well. So hopefully this video will help you to get started, dig into some of these great records. Of course, he did much more in his career, as he moved on into the 70s and 80s. Not as celebrated, but there's a lot more Freddie out there. And, as this lineup shows, don't just look for his own headlining albums. He's a sideman on so many of these Blue Note records. And in some ways, I almost like him better when he's a sideman. He doesn't have to worry about the flow of the album and getting it all together. He can just show up and play. All right, so thanks for tuning in. This is a new YouTube channel, and I hope to be back with more videos. I don't really know what's coming up next, but keep an eye out.